How's it going, legends? This is Levi from BayFoils, and today we're going to teach you how to ride your fliteboard. This is a new version for 2024 where we've looked at and added in some things that are going to be helpful compared to our last video. If you're new to the channel, please like and subscribe. That way we can continue to make helpful videos like this for efoilers across the world. Now, before we get on the water, we want to make sure we have all the necessary safety equipment. Please do your research about your local regulations and wear the appropriate gear. In the United States, most regions require you to at least wear a Coast Guard certified life vest. That is a CGA-PFD is the acronym you will hear on the internet. A helmet is also a wise choice, especially if it's your first time, as efoils are heavy and there's a lot of sharp objects on them. Next is going to be water safety. Make sure you adhere to all the rules of the road when you're accessing the water. If you're launching from a boat channel, make sure you observe and monitor the speed limits and no wake posted signs. And remember, just because efoils don't produce wake when you're on foil doesn't mean that follows the speed limit restrictions. If you're launching from a beach, make sure to launch away from any swimmers, kayakers, paddleboarders, or other watercraft. Keep at least 100 feet of distance while you're riding from anyone else on the water for safety. Because remember, efoils don't have brakes. Now we're going to learn probably the trickiest part first, which is operating the controller. First thing we're going to do is get comfortable with the buttons on our controller. The button on the left is our minus button on the right is our plus button, and then the bottom button is our mode button. The mode button takes you through a bunch of different menus, which is handy to know, but not really that important. The two main ones are the plus and minus buttons. Those adjust our power level accordingly. And then also on the back, we have our trigger. The first thing we want to learn is how to turn on our controller. Press and hold the plus button and the mode button for about 5 seconds. You'll hear it beep, and you'll see the flight screen with the current firmware on the bottom. Next, we're going to learn how to unlock our controller. Fliteboards have a mandatory engine cutoff switch built into the controller to prevent accidental throttling when you fall off the board. When you see this lock icon, that means the motor is locked, and if you pull the trigger, it won't go. In order to unlock it, first you pull the trigger one time, and you'll see this message, ready to ride. Press the minus button when you see this message, and then press and hold the trigger again during the countdown, and the board will start to go. Just remember that first trigger press is really quick, and then the second time, pull it nice and slow so the board doesn't launch. Here's the button sequence much faster. Just remember, trigger, minus, trigger. You'll have to unlock the motor pretty often when you're out there riding, as that's a primary safety feature of the fliteboard. The board will lock the motor if you fall in the water, if the board goes underwater, if the board flips over, if you get separated from the board, or 5 seconds inactivity, which also includes not pulling the trigger during the 5-second countdown. You definitely want to practice arming your motor a couple of times before getting on the water. When you do it on land, you'll see motor testing. Just to recap one more time, pull the trigger, press the minus button, and then pull the trigger again, and you'll start to go. Now that we know how to operate the controls, it's time to get on the water. The first thing we're going to do is practice increasing our speed and riding on our knees. It's a lot safer riding on your knees first because you're less likely to have a really bad fall on your first time, staying closer to the board. I know it can be a little bit challenging to resist the urge to stand up right away, but trust me, you'll have a better time practicing on your knees first. Now, to get up to your knees, it's really important to give yourself a little bit of speed so that you have some stability before coming up to your knees. The quicker you get to that kneeling position, the sooner you're able to increase your speed and get in the right place to start to foil. As you increase your speed, you want to bring your knees a little bit further forward towards the nose, and then eventually you'll feel the board starting to skip. It can be helpful to sit up on your knees or put your hand on the nose of the board to keep weight forward. Once the board starts to skip, that means you have enough speed to foil. All you need to do is lean back for the board to rise off the water. The more time you practice on your knees and get really comfortable with not only the speed to take off, but also the weight shifting that's required to maneuver the board, the easier time you're going to have when you start standing. Once you're ready to try standing, make sure you slow down so you're not lifting off of the water. Trying to stand while you're foiling will ultimately result in a hard wipeout. So while the board is flat on the water, get your front foot at the edge of the deck pad first, and then bring your back foot up. It's really important to stand with your front foot first, as it allows you to keep weight on the nose. Once you're standing, lean forward while increasing your speed on the controller, and lean back when you're ready to fly. Just remember to lean forward again to set it back down level on the water. Remember, we don't have to foil the whole time when we're just learning. Just getting it up off the water for a couple seconds at a time is enough practice for us to learn how to balance while we're on the foil. Something to keep in mind is that standing up on an efoil is unlike standing up on other boards like surfboards. So this is something that you will have to practice, as everyone has different levels of flexibility and mobility. Also, the smaller the board or the heavier you are, makes it so you have to ride faster for it to feel stable enough to stand. Once you're up and standing, the rest is really easy. The efoil is very responsive to your controls. Just turn in the direction you want to go and the board will follow. And that's more or less it. Technique-wise, it's not really hard, but it will take some trial and error and a little bit of practice to figure it out for yourself. Before we go, we're just going to give you a few pro tips that's going to make the learning process smoother. First and foremost, falling. When you fall towards your back. Don't try to fall onto the board or save yourself. The efoil is heavy, there's sharp objects on it. For the most part, the efoil is going to go forward. Falling towards the back minimizes the risk of hitting the board. Don't let go of the trigger. Letting go of the throttle will stop your board immediately, and it will result in a wipeout. Use the plus and minus buttons to adjust your speed while you're learning. You can hear where this person cuts the motor and they fall. Once you stand up on your board, make sure your feet are nice and centered and close together. If your feet are off center, what happens is when you lean forward, you start turning one direction. When you lean back, you turn the other, and that makes your board wobble back and forth and is prone to wiping out. In general, keeping your feet closer together is going to give you more pitch control, as you don't have to lean as much on your front foot to control the up and down motion. A wider stance lets you put more weight on the back that allows you to turn better, but it puts more strain on your legs. At the end of the day, you're going to want to figure out your stance based on how you ride. Everyone has different height and weight and are looking to get different experiences out on the water, so you kind of just have to do some trial and error and figure out what works best for you. And that's basically it. Again, if you really want to learn how to ride an efoil, the best way to do that is take a lesson at a flight school. That way an instructor can go out with you and show you all the different tips and recommendations for your particular experience. Especially if you're looking to buy a board, most flight schools offer a lesson included with purchasing the board. If you have any more questions, you can always email us at info@bayfoils.com or send us a text message. Again, this is Levi from BayFoils, and we'll see you in the next video.